if you can't get rid of the purposely propaganda push preseason polls, then at least remove the coach's word from it, because back in my day, coaches knew ball because they actually watched ball, which clearly doesn't happen much anymore.
You are Locked On Oklahoma State, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma State Cowboys, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to Locked On Oklahoma State, your top stop for all things Cowboy and Cowgirl related. My name is Cody Stovall. I want to thank you kindly for swinging on through to make this your first listen. Today, we get to jump right into this ridiculous conversation that is the coaches poll. 37th is egregious. And I think it does just accentuate, once again, that these polls are ridiculous. And they're strategically designed to prop up the other schools on the schedule. Right? If you're an SEC coach, you're not going to honestly bump some SEC teams out if they are on your schedule. You're going to make sure that they're in the polls at every turn, because if they're on your schedule, you're going to need those propaganda points anyways at some point in the season to make a CFP kind of run. So what's the point of these polls? It's just that. I think it's strategically to drive other opponents' games to help them. And that they're never going to benefit the Big 12. They're never going to necessarily benefit the ACC, which is kind of crazy to think, because they do have some of the big brands like Miami and Florida State and Clemson. But even they don't get the same respect. Even they don't get the same numbers that these other conferences are pushing out here. These coaches aren't like they used to be, right? Coaches used to watch tons of film on tons of players, just because not only did they want to be more educated, but they like to see different systems, different schemes, different ways that quarterbacks function. I don't think you see that a lot anymore. And a lot of these coaches have slipped the tongue and even come out and said that they're not the ones actually sitting down doing this. Sometimes there's somebody in the 80s office, or a secretary, or an assistant, or a GA. It's 95% of the time not the coaches that are coming up with this. They're not even putting a millisecond of time into it. And so for that purpose, I understand why Oklahoma State is kind of 37th. Did I anticipate we would be in a lot of preseason top 25 polls? No, not necessarily. But when you have multiple NFL projection guys like Drew Messmaker, Caleb Hawkins, Wyatt Young, when you have all of these dudes, you would assume that these coaches would be like, or the GAs or the assistants or secretaries or whoever's doing it, would like to dive in a little bit. And that's not happening. So what's the point of the polls? You tell me. Am I just making a conspiracy theory here? Or does it seem very evident that these polls are strategically now used by coaches in certain conferences to make sure that the games that are on their schedule are going to get the most benefit out of? And I get it. But if we know that the polls are no longer based off of honest evaluations, then there's simply just here to help certain conferences, which is insane. Like, this is why the Save College Sports Act, unfortunately, is probably important, because the conferences being on a level playing field, it's probably never going to happen, which is fine. I don't think anyone from the Big 12 or the ACC is clamoring that we have to be even. I don't think that's the case. I think just honest evaluation would be what everybody's looking for. Simply go back to the days where the coaches were involved and they did watch a lot of film from teams and quarterbacks and schools that they weren't going to play. And I get it. Whether you're a former coach or you're a current coach, you've got a lot to squeeze in to your day to get your team prepared. Or you've got a lot to squeeze into your day. And typically, even if you're retired, watching a bunch of film on teams outside of the top 10 doesn't happen much. I already likened this when I jumped on that live show with Jackson and Paul. I don't know, kind of to the committee when they were sitting in that room and they're all sipping wine and champagne and 90% of them are not even watching the game. Like, why would you show that? What a terrible look from a TV viewership perspective, like, hey, let's look at the war room where the committee is going to dictate the top 12 teams in America. And then you pan to everybody and they're just sitting there sipping on Chardonnay, talking to each other while there's active games happening. It's kind of the same thing. And again, you cannot fault these secretaries, GAs, AD assistants, or whatever, because they have a job to do. And if you know you've got Texas A&M and Missouri on your schedule, you're going to make sure that they're ranked if you can. And the beauty of it is, you know that the other coaches in your conference are going to do the same thing. And perhaps it's like that all across the board. Perhaps that's the case, but obviously not. I think you're seeing coaches from outside the Big Ten and the SEC that are trying to give legitimate numbers here. There is no way that you can look at Oklahoma State on paper, right? I understand that this particular ball club hasn't played a game at Oklahoma State. I'm aware that last year we only won one ball game. I'm aware that we've got like 80 new players to break in. But I'm also aware that we have a top 10 level draft pick at quarterback. Even if you didn't have a 1,400-yard rushing guy in the backfield, even if you didn't have a 1,200-yard receiver or a 6'5", 225-pound dude that was a receptions leader for Illinois, even if you didn't have all that, Drew Messmaker in and of itself as a potential top 10 level draft pick, if you have adequate O-line play and somewhat adequate wide receiver development, you're going to do better than 37th in the country. So it's just lazy. It's lazy that these coaches are not involved in this basically at all anymore. It's lazy that the powers that be keep pumping this stuff out. Is it good for off-season content? Sure. So I guess I should be somewhat appreciative. But at the same point in time, like, I don't mind Oklahoma State not being in the top 25. There's a multitude of reasons why you could make an argument that Oklahoma State is a team right outside the top 25. That's okay. But 37th? That's proof that a lot of these coaches that did this have never watched Drew Messmaker, Caleb Hawkins, Wyatt Young at all. It's super evident. So what they're doing is they're going with the people that they see the most. It's easy for Ohio State to get a lot of love. It's easy for them to have the best wide receiver in America because I think that they do. But it's also easy to understand that a lot of these individuals that are doing the voting, even the AP poll, they're only watching those Alabama, Georgia games. They're only watching LSU, Ole Miss, Florida versus Miami. They're only watching those games. They weren't watching any of North Texas. They weren't watching James Madison before they made the CFP. It's a crapshoot. And it's a crapshoot that now has become almost painfully obvious that it's strategic. These coaches are simply doing what is best for them. Understandable, but it's not honest. Like, they're not honestly ranking the best teams in the country. They're ranking the teams that they know, I think, are going to help them the most. And I don't see that going away anytime soon. So get rid of these preseason polls. We all know they're meaningless. Every year there's some teams that are projected top 3, top 5 that end up not even in the top 25 when it's all said and done. But like Notre Dame, I just talked about on that live show, they're beginning the season so high in the polls that they're going to stay super high because their schedule doesn't have a lot of opportunities for them to get tripped up. So because they started so high, they're already in the CFP. They're just in it. And same could be said about a lot of these SEC schools. Some of these top 15 SEC schools, once they get 3-4 dubs, or losses, they would usually fall out of the top 25, but we've seen it quite often. You see a team that gets beat up on a couple weeks in a row, and you're like, okay, well, they're going to fall out of the top 25. And then they're not because, they play Tennessee next week. So you got to keep them at least 25th for one more week. We see it happen on a consistent basis. And it doesn't happen for anybody outside of the SEC or the Big Ten. Save College Sports Act, of all things, could end up being something that helps with this crapola. Because I think a long time, myself included, people were like, not a big deal. And don't get it twisted. It is cool, especially growing up as a kid, seeing your team as a top 25 preseason squad. It gave you something to talk about at school, at recess, at football, baseball, basketball practice. It gave you some things to talk about. But again, you're talking about back in the days where it didn't feel like coaches were strategically raising other people on their schedule to help out themselves and the rest of their conference directly. The conferences used to be smaller. That's part of it. The conferences didn't used to make gargantuan amounts of money. That's got to be part of it as well. But I don't know when it became normal to delegate this kind of stuff to assistants, but it's fairly known by now. There's a decent amount of coaches that don't hide it. There's been interviews. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure I've heard even Mike Gundy saying in an interview, oh, I didn't do that. That was, X, Y, or Z, right? That was this person in my office. So why do we have this stupid thing anyways? I've already said my piece. Let me know in the comment section. Do you think I'm just spreading conspiracy bullcrap for S's and giggles? Or do you see the same thing that I see? It is that time to rock. Your favorite squad in the game is the best in the business to help you do just that. Y'all know I'm a hardcore hat guy. But since 1986, the game has been creating classic college hats that fans can be proud of. Whether you're an alumnus, current student, season ticket holder, or simply somebody who just never misses a game, a great college hat is more than just apparel. It's a way to represent your school everywhere you go. This year, the game is celebrating its 40th anniversary by giving fans a chance to save on some of their most iconic college hats. If you've been thinking about replacing an old favorite or adding a new one to your collection, now is the perfect time. Being a hat guy, I'm legitimately always on the market, right? I have certain hats that I like to wear in the show. I have certain hats that I like to wear every day. I have certain hats that I like to wear outside if I know I'm going to be sweating my face off. And I have certain hats that I like to wear out. So you got to make sure you have an assortment for me specifically. And thankfully, the game has so many options to choose from that it would allow me to keep this hat game rocking and rolling. With hundreds of officially licensed college hats to choose from, you'll find the perfect fit for game day and every day. Don't miss this chance to celebrate 40 years of the game with 40% off your entire order. Make sure that you go to the Game Caps, use a promo code Locked On. That is thegamecaps.com. Promo code Locked On, one word. Celebrate 40 years of the game with 40% off. But obviously, get in on this action now. Don't wait. The 40th anniversary will not last forever. All right, now we get to roll right into segment 2 here. The running back room should be pretty good. The beauty of it is there's a lot of unknown behind Caleb Hawkins. But thankfully, I saw another ranking that had him as the number 3 ranked running back in the country. And so I went to find it, and then I popped up on this ESPN article that did the same thing. And I had forgotten, or I didn't realize, they ranked Caleb Hawkins number 10, which is a little surprising to me because this is supposed to be about production. I understand he is making a big jump from the G5 level to the Big 12. But he's also a 6'2" dude that apparently got faster while also gaining 22 pounds. So now you're talking about a dude that's like 6'2", 230, and apparently is still rocking and rolling a 4.4 40. Yeah, that's a replication almost of Ollie Gordon. He has a very comparable running style as well. Now, so going back to the ESPN article, they had Kejuan Lacey as number 1, He had almost 1,600 yards last year. I don't think anyone's going to disagree with that. Jordan Ball from Florida, talented, absolutely. Athletic specimen, almost 1,200 yards. I could see that to some degree. Ahmad Hardy absolutely deserves to be up here, almost 1,700 mother trucking yards. Then they've got Mark Fletcher at 4. This other deal had Caleb Hawkins at 3, right ahead of Mark Fletcher. I'm trying to find it. Now, anywho, they had they had multiple Big 12 running backs in here, which I think is a good representation of the conference. Here it is, CFB Report. They had Caleb Hawkins number 3, Mark Fletcher number 4. They had LJ Martin number 7. And if you look at this ESPN, they have 2 Texas running backs. Kid from Georgia Tech, Justice Hayes, that had 850 yards. He did have a massive season the year before. Okay, I'll give him that. They do have LJ Martin at number 9, and they have Caleb Hawkins at number 10. I'm okay with LJ Martin being ranked ahead of Caleb Hawkins to some degree. He has proven it. He is a known commodity. But come on now. Caleb Hawkins with an upgraded offensive line, with a better complement of wide receivers on the outside to keep defenses more honest, an upgrade in the tight end room. I'm not saying that Caleb Hawkins is going to rush for, 1,400 yards again, probably because you've got Iode back there. You've got Dennis Moody, the third back there. You've got Katie Batman Jones back there. You've got Mason that came up from UCO back there. So I do think that there's a lot of conversation, but maybe Iode is somebody that's not getting talked about enough, because he didn't get a lot of action this previous season after transferring from North Texas a year prior to that. So he's a little bit of an unknown. But what was that? Maybe it was EA Sports. Somebody correct me down in the comment section. Somebody last week, I believe it was, put out, maybe it was even PFF. I can't recall. But anyways, top 10 running backs this upcoming season. And they had Caleb Hawkins in the top 3, if I recall correctly. But they also had Iode in there at like number 7 or something to that effect. I didn't realize that his production, previously was to that degree. It has you excited, but it also makes you understand that there's an expectation for Caleb Hawkins to be a top 3 running back in the Big 12. There is an expectation for him to kind of carry that Ollie Gordon level load. Now, I think the difference is Gordon still rushed for 880 yards his last year while getting hit in the backfield. It was 51.4% or 51.7% going into the last 3 games of the year. Could it have improved a little bit? Maybe, but he was still getting hit in the backfield at least 50% of the time he touched the football, and still had almost 880 yards. So now that Caleb Hawkins likely has a much improved offensive line, why would he not be a top 3? And if there is anybody in the Big 12 that you could potentially say, okay, I could see that, it would be LJ Martin or maybe Cam Cook. Cam Cook put up, 1,650 yards, something to that effect at Jack State. It's not about where you came from. It's about the production that you had while you were there. Going and getting a wide receiver from Boise State that had 700 yards and 2 touchdowns is not the same as going and getting a North Texas wide receiver that had 1,300 yards and double-digit touchdowns. It's not the same. Is there going to be a differentiation between the G5 and the Big 12? For sure. So in the G5, if you were just putting up, above average stats, I find it slightly inconceivable that they're magically going to make a big leap. But again, if you're putting up video game numbers, 15, 14, 1,300 yards in the G5, you could reasonably expect that carryover to be 7, 8, 900 yards in the Big 12. So you let me know down in the comment section. Do you think that there is an argument to Caleb Hawkins not being number 1 or 2 in this league because the only other names that I could physically possibly think could be in this conversation would be Cam Cook and LJ Martin. But outside of that, yeah, I don't know. I guess you do have Mekhi Hughes now at Houston, but he went from an All-American level dude essentially at Tulane to like 4th on the depth chart at Oregon. Oregon's supremely talented, but that is got to be slightly concerning, right? As you're coming into the year, it's just nice to see another running back, because this is a normal thing, right? Going back from Joe Randall to Justice Hill and Chris Carson, and people forget that Tyreek Hill's a running back at Oklahoma State. And then, seeing what Jalen Warren has been able to do is pretty amazing. Chuba Hubbard, Ollie Gordon. There is a yearly expectation that we have a guy that could put up 1,000 yards in the backfield like clockwork. And to me, we have one again. So him being in these top 3 conversations nationally make a ton of sense. It leads me to believe that, unlike the coaches poll individuals, this CFB report has watched a lot of North Texas film and is very well aware that Caleb Hawkins is now 22 pounds heavier, while supposedly still getting faster. It's time for your decor section to get a little bit of a upgrade, a little bit of kick in the teeth, and you need to do that with Wayfair. Your home should feel more like a home, and sometimes it doesn't take a complete renovation to make that happen. Every now and again, you just got to find the right pieces to go in the right places, whether it's inside or outside, whether you're refreshing one room or you're updating an entire space. Wayfair helps you create the home that you feel the most comfortable in. Wayfair makes it easy to shop for furniture and home essentials across every style and budget, with everything from decor, lighting, storage, seating, rugs. Doesn't matter. They probably got you covered. Plus, with Wayfair Verified, product specialists carefully evaluate products for quality, functionality, and ease of assembly, helping shoppers feel more confident before they buy. Y'all know I've got some projects going on in the backyard right now. I think one of the next things that we're going to do is we're going to kind of make a little L-shaped sun protecting area over on the side of the house, because when the sun hits the right side of the house, it gets some shade over there. So I think we're going to upgrade that section. We need to get some patio furniture that isn't going to get absolutely dominated by the doggos. I think Wayfair is going to have me covered. If you're also ready for an upgrade inside or outside your home, head on over to wayfair.com right now to shop all things that get your space ready for less with wayfair.com. WAYFAR.com. Head there today, because they have every style for every home. All right, segment 3B about Jim Williams and more realignment. I think the world of Jim Williams. I know his sources are impeccable, but I really hope he's wrong to some degree on this one. No thanks. Like we were just talking about the polls being problematic for schools in the Big 12 and the ACC. And I think the biggest perception knock on the Big 12 right now is, well, they just got a bunch of G5 guys, and all of their portal additions are mostly G5 players. So they're basically just a really, really, really glorified G5 conference. That perception, unfortunately, does exist. And if you start adding USF and Tulane and UConn, yeah, I think it makes the perception worse. Like right now, even though Miami and Florida State and Clemson do exist in the ACC in North Carolina, even though those big time, quote unquote, somewhat blue blood brands exist in the ACC, the perception, I think nationally, is the Big 12 is slightly ahead of the SEC. So if there was another round of realignment, most people across the country, I would assume, would say the Big 12 is in a little bit of a better position than the ACC. Maybe not a ton, but collectively speaking, in every sport across the board, Big 12 is in a better spot. But if you start adding more G5 schools, I think we officially go below the ACC from a perception standpoint. And Brett Yormark doesn't take very many L's, but recently that poor fellow's been taking it on the chin. How he has high IQ people around him that convinced him that this monster deal was going to be beneficial blows my ever-loving mind. And even more than that, how did he or somebody convince the rest of the Big 12 to be okay with it? Or did the rest of the Big 12 not really like it? Because we had that private equity thing that was optional and everybody opted out of it. So why is this monster thing not optional? I mean, it should have been. It doesn't sound like it was. I mean, I don't know how much involvement Brett Yormark has with the ADs and making these kind of decisions. And maybe that was it, right? Maybe the private equity thing rubbed him the wrong way because nobody wanted to be a part of it. So he said, fine, now I'm going to make you put this monstrosity of a logo all over everything. I know I'm still complaining like the guy who yells, get off my lawn at 75 years old about this logo thing. And I've seen a couple of the comments saying that they don't find the logo that big of a turnoff optically. I don't know. Maybe I'm making a mountain out of a molehill. I can't get over it. Especially not for $1 million. And you're seeing all these other deals prop up, right? Oklahoma State, I believe, was the first NCAA football team to announce they're wearing patches. We still haven't announced what it's worth. And I got to give credit where credit's due. I've got some donor buddies that are usually fairly helpful in acquiring some information. They're being very tight-lipped on the amount of this Osage deal. I don't think it's as high as some of, like, Ohio State's was what, $17 million a year for their patch. There's another school that was, I believe, in the Big Ten that was like 11 mil to wear their patch. I think Oklahoma State's Osage deal is probably closer to that 11 mil range. I have no clue, none at all, because they're being very tight-lipped about this dollar amount. But if I were to throw a number out there, I would assume it's probably worth 8 or 9-ish per season. So is it the same as Ohio State, 17 million a year? No. But damn sure isn't a measly $1 million a year. Like, Monster reaps all of these benefits. Brett Yormark has this disillusionment that we need to keep spreading the Big 12 to freaking London and all these other, like, it's ridiculous. Like, nobody from Azerbaijan is going to watch a Kansas State, Iowa State game in London and say, you know what? I need to make a trip to Ames, Iowa now. It ain't going to happen. So why Brett Yormark's beating this international drum so much is kind of crazy. But that's great for Monster because they are an international recognized brand, because words are still hard for me. But now we're doing this, trying to spread the Big 12 all across the world. And again, I don't necessarily hate it per se. I appreciate that Brett Yormark is taking swings that Bob Bowlesby just would not do. Even if he misses sometimes, I'm okay with it. But when it starts becoming more misses than hits, it becomes a little problematic. I would say in the beginning, Brett Yormark was batting at like 800. And just the last couple months, going back to the glass floor thing on, he's probably batting like 290 right now. Still pretty good. That Mendoza 300 line, though, he needs to work on it, because, yeah, you start adding these more G5 schools, I think that's going to be a big punch in the gut for the Big 12. And I don't think it'll make it necessarily a laughing stock, but nobody views the Pac-12 as a real conference, right? Everyone views the Pac-12 as a G5 for the most part. Now, they've done significantly better in the last year or so, so that'll probably change. But if we start doing this, I think people are going to start jokingly saying, well, look, the Big 12 is basically just the Pac-12 now. I don't want it. Give me some ACC schools in the Big 12. Hey, I'll be tickled as all get out, but not all this G5 crap, except for maybe Memphis. Maybe Memphis. They've done quite a bit So, anywho, that's all we're going to have for this one right here. As always, you know I love you. God bless. Go Pokes. Thank you for tuning in to make this your first listen here on Locked On Oklahoma State. You could be anywhere. I'm so happy that you did choose to be here. Do me a favor, hit the like button if you liked it. Dislike it if you didn't. That's okay too. More importantly, share, comment, and subscribe. My podcast and people out there, you're everything that makes this work. I appreciate what you do. So do me a favor and go do what you do. Hammer on them stars and hammer away at them reviews. Alrighty, y'all. Later, my taters.